Hello, I'm Simon Whistler. You're watching the Today I Found Out YouTube channel, and in the video today, you're going to learn all about the convoluted history of French fries. Let's get started.
The convoluted history of French fries. Exactly who introduced these golden strips of goodness to the world isn't entirely known. Among the various theories, it's generally accepted that the French fry was invented by either the Belgians or the French around the 18th century. Potatoes were first introduced to Europe not through the French or the Belgians, but through the Spanish. In 1537, Jimenez de Quesada and his Spanish forces encountered a village in Colombia where all the natives had fled. Among other things, they found in the natives' foodstuffs potatoes, which the Spanish initially called truffles. Around 20 years later, potatoes were brought back to Spain and also introduced to Italy. At this time, potatoes were still quite small and bitter and didn't grow well in either Spain or Italy. However, over time, larger and less bitter versions of the plant were cultivated, and the potato gradually caught on elsewhere in Europe, though it was initially met with quite a bit of resistance. For instance, when the potato was first introduced to Ireland and Scotland, the Protestants predominantly rejected it due to the fact that the potato wasn't mentioned anywhere in the Bible. Thus, it wasn't clear whether it was acceptable to eat, so they refused to plant them at first. The Catholics, on the other hand, chose to sprinkle them with holy water before planting, thus making them acceptable to plant and eat. Elsewhere in Europe, many were convinced the potatoes caused a variety of diseases and were perhaps poisonous. That said, historical accounts indicate that the Belgians were possibly frying up thin strips of potato as early as the late 17th century in the Meuse Valley between Dinant and Liège. However, due to scant documented evidence, some historians argue that it wasn't until the late 18th century that the Belgians started making fries, which is important to note when we get to the French origin theory. How the Belgians supposedly came up with the idea was that in the Meuse Valley, it was very common for people to fry up small fish as a staple for their diet, so it was natural enough to cut up other food items and fry them up as well, such as thin strips of potatoes. So perhaps not only the first instance of fries, but also of fish and chips. Giving some credence to the story is that the Spanish controlled much of what is now modern-day Belgium at the time the Spanish introduced the potato to Europe, so at least the Belgians probably were among the first to have a crack at the potato in terms of thinking up ways to prepare food from the plant. Now to the French argument. The popularity of the potato in France is largely credited to a French army medical officer named Antoine-Augustin Parmentier, who very famously championed the potato throughout France and parts of Europe. During the 7 Years' War that started in the 1750s, Parmentier was taken captive and, as part of his prison rations, was given potatoes. At this time, the French were predominantly only using potatoes for hog feed, as they thought potatoes caused various diseases when eaten directly. In fact, in 1748, the French Parliament even banned cultivation of potatoes, as they were convinced potatoes caused leprosy. However, while in prison in Prussia, Parmentier was forced to cultivate and eat potatoes, and found the French notions about the potato just weren't true. When he came back to France, Parmentier began championing the potato as a potential food source. Finally, in 1772, the Paris Faculty of Medicine proclaimed that potatoes were edible for humans, though Parmentier still encountered significant resistance and wasn't even allowed to grow potatoes in his garden at the Invalides Hospital, where he worked as a pharmacist. Parmentier then began a more aggressive campaign to promote the potato in France, hosting dinners featuring potatoes with such notable dignitaries as Benjamin Franklin, Antoine Lavoisier, King Louis XVI, and Queen Mary Antoinette. He would also hire armed guards to surround his potato patch to try to convince people that what was in the patch was very valuable. He would then tell his guards to accept any bribes that were offered by people and let them steal the potatoes. Despite his efforts, it took a famine in 1785 for the potato to become popular in France. Just a decade later, in 1795, potatoes were being grown on a large scale in France, including at the Royal Gardens in Tuileries, where the gardens were converted into potato fields. Within that span of time, the French either invented or learned to make fries. Once this happened, French fries became extremely popular in France, particularly in Paris, where they were sold by pushcart vendors on the streets and called frites. It should be noted that in the mid-18th century, shortly before the potato became popular in France, the War of Austrian Succession was going on, much of which took place around modern-day Belgium. So it's possible that the French soldiers were introduced to fries by the Belgians at this time, and a couple of decades later, when the potato first started to be accepted in France, the former soldiers remembered and started preparing potatoes in this way, and it spread throughout France from there. Or it's possible the French came up with the idea on their own and spread fries to Belgium, or that both came up with the idea independently. Whatever the case, it was the French who seem to have been the ones to spread fries to America and Britain, and it, in turn, was the Americans, through fast food chains, that eventually popularly introduced them to the rest of the non-European world as French fries. That said, because of this latter spread by American fast food chains, in some parts of the non-European world, French fries are sometimes known as American fries. Bonus facts. In 1802, Thomas Jefferson had the White House chef, Frenchman Honoré Julien, prepare potatoes served in the French manner for a dinner party. He described these as potatoes deep-fried while raw in small cuttings. This was one of the earliest references to fried potato strips being referred to as French. Bonus fact 2. Parmentier not only championed the potato, but he also was responsible for the first mandatory smallpox vaccination in France in 1805, when he was the Inspector General of the Health Service under Napoleon. Parmentier was also the one who invented the French dish hachis parmentier, a variation of which is sometimes called shepherd's pie, basically ground beef topped with mashed potatoes and cheese. Variations on this dish include adding gravy, corn, or other vegetables. In addition to these accomplishments, Parmentier also founded a school of bread making, was a pioneer in methods for extracting sugar from sugar beets, and heavily researched food preservation methods, including refrigeration. So I really hope you liked that video, and if you did like it, click like below and leave us a comment to let us know what you think. And also check out a couple of our other videos, which are linked to on the screen now, and don't forget to subscribe for brand new videos every day. Thanks for watching.